Hi. I missed you. There's nobody there, but I missed you. I'll wait until a couple of people get here first. Hi. You go lie down in the chair. There we go. You want to see Tosh? Can you see him? There he is. Say hi, Tosh. Glad to see you. Ah. So we'll see what comes through tonight. It's so funny. I always try to prepare before these things, and then it's like as soon as I go live, the energy just changes, and all of a sudden, other stuff needs to be adjusted, and that's that basically is just the way it goes with group dynamics. I get everything the way I want it, but as soon as other energy comes in, it just needs a little bit of tweaking. Hang on. I'm gonna push this table because I need more space. And we'll see what comes in. I know I know what I want to talk about. We'll see if that is allowed to happen. Whoops. Hang on. Yeah, it's weird. Weird the way this happens. I feel like other stuff wants to be in the background. I'm debating a little with myself whether I should just go with a group energy that because again, it's just all changing. I even practiced what I was going to say, and I have all of these notes, and it's all laid out, it's all bite-sized. I was toying with the idea for the network going forward. I was toying with the idea of possibly recording. I don't know. They're doing stuff with the light right now. I was toying with the idea of recording sections, and my mind just went blank. I know that I need to talk about group dynamics. I know that I need to talk about the way energies affect one another. This is something that I'm very, very good at, which is why I hold the position that I hold. I'm very good at sorry, I'm just futzing with this thing a little bit more. I don't know why but it's always the angle of the camera that bothers me. I'm very good at interdimensional harmonics, multidimensional harmonics, unprecedented levels of energetic exchange, things that have never been done before. None of this has ever been done before, I might add. There's a they're doing stuff with the energy. So one of the things that happens when people join the call, 1 minute. When I ring the bell, this is a Balinese clearing bell. It breaks up energy imprints. It's a sacred bell. I'm the only one who uses it. I'm very careful about what it touches. It's allowed to touch my hands. It's allowed to, every time I set it down on top of this, which I keep scrupulously clean. I have linked the sound of this bell, this vibration, I have linked it with the intention, an energetic stream that holds the intention of removing. It cleans. It removes any place in the listener's field, as well as there's also another layer where it's clearing the collected, anything that is that's a disgusting analogy, but it's like a blackhead. Anywhere that is where there's like little dark frequencies stuck, just a crap that you don't want on you. So group energy is very much like shared bathwater. And I don't know that if I really said this all in a live stream previously. I've said it to smaller groups, I think, but I haven't posted it so that it would go on YouTube. When group energy comes together, there's a particular way that it's assembled. And once a group is a collection of people, it's very much like sharing bathwater, because energy moves like water. And it's also a little bit, another analogy would be like going through a car wash. I'm going to get back to that. You know, when you share like a hot tub, have you ever been to a group hot tub and sometimes you have to like prepare yourself to like not get cooties? There's a reason that the third dimension, if you think of the third dimension as being the tip of the triangle pointed down, right? We come through from the cosmos, or the energy is coming from the cosmos, and it's pointed down into individuality, into embodiment, which is where it gets more and more compressed, more compressed, and there's more and more separation. This is the way it had worked. What's happening now is that we're going back up. Actually, that's somewhat true. It's somewhat not true. There's some of us who are trying to get more embodied. I'm one of those. But then there are also people who have been very much based in physicality, who are, their challenge is to open up their crown, open up to God, and expand. What we're aiming for here is the 11 gateway that will allow us to lift up the entire planet. It will allow us to incorporate very high degree of energetic vibrations infused into physical matter. It requires that the physical structure be changed, and it's no longer going to be carbon based, it's crystalline based. We're already in this process. So one of the things that happens is that when you become lighter and lighter and more porous, because as you shed your density, you shed your ancestral wounding, you shed all the character, the things that you didn't want. So many of us have been purging. We've lost family members, we've lost houses, we've lost our old way of life, the institutions. This is happening on a collective level as well. It's happening to us as individuals, but it's also happening to us as a collection of people. There's collective karma, there's group karma. And patterns repeat until they are brought to a halt and brought to 0 point, and something else is commenced. So we're rapidly approaching this point where there's going to be an initial wave. It's a number of different things are happening. There's one scenario where we've heard of the 3 waves of volunteers. That's something that has already been established. It's been set in place. But outside of that, it's kind of like there are 3 main waves, but there's not like a hard and fast line between them. So there's a lot of drifting. It's basically, it's waves. It moves like water. So when you're in a group, when you're coming out of physicality, if you have had the experience so far where you've been very physically oriented and you were really conditioned in the third dimensional system, going up, leaving that and going up into a broader area of the triangle is going to feel very unstable. It moves around a lot more, for one thing. It comes with a lot more responsibility. Comes with a great deal more awareness, absolutely. There's a lot of benefit to it. There's a reason things, the third dimension is the way it is. It was designed to be like a number of reasons. Hang on a minute. I'm getting like 3 different things that need to come in and be put into linearity at the same time. It's difficult for me to it's actually easier for me to keep track of it when it's all moving and take it as a swath. Dividing it and having it come out of my mouth in a linear form is much more difficult for me. Because this group that's on this group that is on the call is already divided into I'm getting maybe 4 different groups that need different messages, and all of this has to come simultaneously. So you know what we're going to do right now? I would invite you to just send your antenna out, stretch your feelings out, and see if you can feel the other members of the group. Leave your mind at home. Kind of like don't try to figure it out with your mind at all. It's actually when your mind dilates and opens. It's a little bit like those. Remember those magic eye puzzles? You could see them at the mall. It was just like one broad pattern, and if you sat there and you stared at it with your eyes open and you just kind of soften your vision, all of a sudden there was another image in there that was 3-dimensional, and once you were in, you could actually like look around it and it becomes very 3-dimensional. It's a little bit like that. There's a process of learning to feel around and figure out, like when I feel the energy of this group, it's not a hard division, but it's like a there are like maybe 4 main streams and another partial one that's comprised of the people on this group. But I can tell you that if you're listening to this transmission right now, there are frequencies that you're getting based on what you've already dropped. So if you show up and you're somebody who is, you probably wouldn't show up if this was the case, but if you're somebody who is very condensed and solid, there's no room for anything new to come into you. One of the things that we need to do is become much more like pumice. It's a little bit like pumice, where you show up with some parts that are you, and some parts that are spaces where other things, maybe you need them, or it allows you to move, allows you to connect with people on a more energetic level, where it's much more giving. There's still structure, but it's not unyielding, and it provides for connection rather than separation. That's so important. So there's an entirely different dynamic. There's an entirely different way of functioning in 5 and in higher dimensions than there is in 3. In the third dimension, everything is reduced to one choice, or you've got one thing that's right or it's wrong. There's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. And the structures have been very unmovable, or very difficult to move. In a group dynamic, everything is communal. You can still have things that you basically own. If you think about, if you take pumice as an example, if a person is made out of pumice, they still have their own solidity, but it allows energy to penetrate them and be passed. Group energy in the fifth dimension is very much like sharing a hot tub. So it requires a certain skill set where you're clean when you get in. You need to like really be, it's like sharing a hot tub or you want to, don't bring your crap in. Like, be clean, take a shower before you get in the hot tub with other people. Definitely don't take a crap in the hot tub that's shared with other people. It's disgusting and nobody wants you there. If that's the kind of thing you're doing on a regular basis, you're not going to be allowed in. It's been, how do I want to say this? There is a certain responsibility that comes with being in an area that's shared. It's just like sharing bath water. The energy is going to circulate, and you need to be very aware of what is yours, although it's sometimes very difficult to tell, because if you're let me back up, hang on. The further up you go, if individuality is down here at the base of the triangle, the further up you go, the wider, the bigger the groups are, and the more porous, the more expansive we each get. So we share more with more people. That's why when you get all the way up to the top, we say all is one, because it's like one great big moving Venn diagram, and qualities and are shared with others, and there are loose groupings, but they move, and they start to turn into almost like curves. There's like solidities that they start to kind of come together. I'm explaining this very badly. Hang on a minute. So this is a weird one. It always happens this way, doesn't it? I know at some point it's going to get more stable. I'm actually waiting for, I need somebody else to help me do it on a singular basis. I can't do it and still hold the frequencies that I'm holding. That's why it moves, or my topics of conversation move around so much. I do hear it. I just can't control it without assistance, finding a singularity, a single point, because that's not my job. So how do I want to say this? I don't know. Oh, so this is the first thing I want to tell you. Sorry, I know this is disjointed. Right now, if you can stretch out with your feelings and just connect with the others who are listening. Can you feel that shift that just happened? There's a field, there's a unified field being formed. When we add an intention, we're actually building a certain kind of structure. Sarah Adams referred to it as a new life form, and it absolutely is. This has never never happened before. There's an unprecedented event in all of the multiverse. This particular thing has never happened before. And there was a plan established in the Joan of Arc lifetime that We didn't know it was going to turn out this way, but because our plan went awry, it didn't go the way we expected. We went to a plan B and we were suppressed. It didn't go the way we expected. And because of that, we're getting a certain degree of restitution. So I am going to talk a bit about the Joan of Arc template. There was a template that planted certain seeds within that template. And when you plant these seeds, it starts an energy developing. And it quickly became a group energy, and it went in, this is an important thing to hear this part. It went in two directions because it was it couldn't do anything else. It was a time of polarity because it just was. We went down there with this structure with certain beings in it to hold certain jurisdictions and do certain jobs. ET beings had to come down, and we each made agreements to do specific jobs. And we created this structure to be able to withstand landing because it was a time of such incredible polarity, and we had to meet that specific situation where it was. It was such a disgusting bandwidth, compressed and horrible. And we could see the effect. We could tell that energy needed to get in there and begin a movement. And in order to get it to begin the movement, it had to contain elements of polarity. You can't go down as a single savior and you would bounce right off an area that's condensed and dark. It has to have a way in. You've got to meet your population where they are, kind of infiltrate it, plant a seed, and then change it. We knew it was going to be very difficult going. We also knew that there was no way out until we did it. We made agreements to stay until the end. We made agreements to hold our populace, to link with our particular population, that to be in the structure. And we knew that we made it something that could not be taken apart in the third dimension. Number one, you can't see it in the third dimension. You have to have a certain level of awareness. So somebody else was going to have to come and help with undoing it. And they're not going to undo it completely until until like the mission is complete. It's close. They took the structure down. I know they took the structure down, but there are certain things that we designed to propel us forward. There are certain things, really just like, I think two, as far as I know. There's one exchange that still has not taken place. So it's all about getting the earth through the 11 gateway, right? There are certain, within the construct, which basically looked like a Merkaba built out of like gigantic tractor beams that contain a lot of trauma. Trauma is the attachment. And until it's healed, you're not going to get out. Healed or resolved, you're not going to get out. So it's the construct itself strengthened, or I should say it created movement in both directions. When we originally landed in the Joan of Arc lifetime, like I said, there were three of us in the original construct, Josh Cram, Carmen Lozado, and me. Josh goes in the middle. His name was not Josh then. It was Charles, King Charles. Charles the Beloved / Charles the Mad, same person. And his queen at the time was Isabeau of Bavaria. Um, we set a prophecy in motion. We seeded a prophecy ahead of the Joan of Arc identity landing. We did that in order to engage mass consciousness because we needed a way in, because the biggest problem is getting past the belief barrier. It's the belief barrier. That's one of the biggest problems. There are a lot of big fat problems, but the belief barrier is really horrendous to get through. So I know at some point I'm going to be talking more about Disney, more about certain things that we did to specifically influence mass culture, collective consciousness. There was a specific way that we did it. The dark side and the light side use essentially the same, many, not all, many of the same tools, the same methods. Everything they do, we do too. It can only work that way, but the intention is entirely different. Hang on a minute, I'm losing my snake. Just a minute. Oh, there he is. He's stuck in the chair. I'm gonna leave him there. I can move better this way anyway. So one of the first things we did, we had energy takes the path of least resistance. So one of the ways that it's easiest to get into mass consciousness is to go in via stories, because that's why I'm always telling you all that your choice of entertainment, your choice of music is I cannot begin to tell you how essential it is that you make choices that resonate with you, and don't make casual agreements to have stuff on the background that isn't of your choosing. If you allow it to be on in the background, you're saying, this is okay with me, there's nothing I can do, I agree that I'm powerless against this. You need to take a strong stand. You need to be aware of what's going on around you. And I have this thing. I wear these out. I wear them in the grocery store. I wear them every time I go out, shopping, anywhere, because I will not be influenced, will not be what's the word? Steered. They really do. They really have, but the dark side really has put all kinds of crap in background music. And what they're going to do, one of the things the dark side does, is that they're going to make it very easy to listen to. They're going to lure you with comfort. I'm not saying that comfort is bad. Comfort, we all want comfort. Of course we want comfort. But what they're going to do they're going to numb you and kind of lure you with pleasure, basically, or with ease. When this is where it becomes very dicey, because if you've listened to Abraham Hicks, you know that ease is what you want. Of course, there's like a higher version and a lower version of every last thing, and the choice point is where the steps in the middle. It's the fine line where that really has the capacity to tip you one way or another by accumulation of small choices. It's the accumulation of the small choices that you make where you steer yourself one way, or you just allow one little thing and you think it's not that bad, or even bigger is that you're not aware of it and you think, this won't influence me, I can handle it, I'm not going to be traumatized by that, it's just pretend horror movie, it's just whatever. You need to be a lot more aware and be scrupulous about the choices that you make. because they matter, they accumulate. And I really cannot overemphasize the effect of kind of vibrational drift in the energetic construct that we established during the Joan of Arc lifetime. If you haven't read the story, you should go back and read, familiarize yourself with the story. I would recommend, I guess I recommend if you're gonna choose a movie version or a film version, I would say probably The Messenger, even though I found some inaccuracies in that, but it's the closest one. We set certain things in motion. And I know that I keep harping on the Joan of Arc lifetime, but the reason I'm doing it is because it is incredibly important now. It matters now to Ascension, the entire army, the entire light army. It's an army in lower dimensions, but it turns into an orchestra as soon as we're in 5. Same people. The energetic construct had on each of the points, it had a pair of us. There's a lot of shared jobs. For example, you don't go down in, it wasn't like one person doing every job. It was, although it can function that way. If it was a smaller group, we would do it that way. But we had, because we knew that this construct was going to lift the, we were trying to put certain things in place to get us through the 11 gateway. So as a consequence, on every single point, here, I'll use this. This is not the structure. This is a different structure. This obviously is a pyramid. But it's a Merkaba, the energetic structure around the earth that we put in place. But the way it works, if you imagine these being great big tractor beams, that were inescapable, and we made that agreement. We knew that was going to happen. We placed 2 beings on each point of the Merkaba, and we made it, there was a ratio that these 2, each pair had to achieve balance regarding a certain issue. And then there was going to be a rotation, and then so it was like a double rotation, or really a triple rotation, but without getting too involved. As soon as one pair manages to balance each issue, it goes over and another pair balances that. But there's a sequential balancing. So unlocking it has been my job in this lifetime. Along with other people, because it's 2 people on every point. So I spent, 15, 16 years in Riften rebalancing one thing that was extremely hard to move. And when I finally left that, I spent another 5, 6 years on another point, rebalancing with another person. It gets faster. The increments go faster as you resolve the density. Where was I going with this? Hang on. In the Joan of Arc lifetime, we established the structure that would also create a rotation. It worked a little bit like centrifugal force, where Josh controlled the physical portion in the middle, and Carmen took the dark side and I took the light side, and basically we go spinning around, spinning around, spinning around. It's very much like an atomic movement, because you're still using the laws of nature. And there's a certain built-in tension that provides rotation. So that's what we've been doing. And as we gathered as we connected to each individual soul, and this has happened throughout history too. As we got the attention of each of the individuals, their energy was it goes into the collective soup, like it goes in, if this was the Merkaba, it goes into the center, and all of this energy starts spinning around and it becomes soup. So what we had intended, the light side had intended, was that the experience, everybody would get the experience of increased, hang on, let me rephrase that. We had to accelerate humanity's development to get them all through the, as many as possible, through the 11 gateway, which is this now. So since they weren't really learning fast enough by lifetimes and lifetimes of reincarnation, really they were just repeating the same patterns, and humanity just was not learning. So it's kind of like you send down beings, you grab them all by the hands and you say, just this time we're going to put this acceleration thing in place to rapidly, dramatically, what is it? Wait, what's the word? Dramatically accelerate development. Make the children grow up faster. Yes, make the children grow up faster. There comes with that a push for children to for earlier, faster maturity in children. So one of the things that this did, it went in both directions. It had to, because otherwise, number one, otherwise you're gonna lose the entire crop. That's just true. They weren't learning, period. The harvest, I don't like that word, but that's the word they use in the Law of One. But it is basically accurate. You plant all these seeds, you hope they grow, and these weren't. They were suppressed. So basically they were underdeveloped, and there was a window of time, and we were trying to get as many across over the finish line as possible. So we established this structure, and as you add your energy into it, by virtue of where, this is important, pay attention to this part, by virtue of your dominant vibration, each individual soul is tipped one way or another. Usually, almost nobody is exactly 50-50. There's going to be a vibrational drift one way or another. And a lot of this morphs and changes all the time. You know why? Because some people are very casual about what they listen to, and they're sleepy and they're sloppy, and they just allow themselves to be carried. So whatever. In my view, and I'm not alone, that's why this was allowed by all these galactic councils. They thought, yes, this is a good idea. Get as many as possible out of there. The Council of Balance was established to oversee those of us in the structure, and we watched very carefully to see how that was going. We established a template designed to be extremely, I want to use the word contagious, be picked up as many people by as many as possible, but the emphasis was still on free choice. Someone has to be responsible for holding those who have chosen darkness, who are very fear. But let me rephrase that though, because a lot were making not really choices, but they were lured there. And I'm going to get back to that in a second. The basic thing though is that when you give your power away, there's always going to be someone eager to take it. So there were archons who were archons of the Cabal who were there and were trying to harvest as many as possible, confine them, hold them, terrorize them, and use them as batteries because they are nourished and strengthened by dark energy. On the other side, we went down, I did, went down to assist, to take a place in, there was I occupy all these different dimensions, but I have on the Council of Balance, which is on 12, but then we made the construct in 6, and then we operated it from 4, and then of course our bodies were in 3. But by virtue of vibrational drift, if you're a sleeper, if you're somebody who is not awake and you allow yourself to be steered, you're fair game. You're fair game. So the energy is going to exist in the 3rd dimension. The energy, it's a place of polarity. So it's going to exist in polarity. There's going to be a light side and a dark side. It doesn't really work this way in higher dimensions. All is one, and you don't have that kind of choice or judgment of the other as other. But you do in 3, and that's where the trapping was taking place. So the goal of the construct was to get everybody up and moving, because it had reached a place of such density that nothing could move. And because it couldn't move, it couldn't develop. There's just nothing. It was so compressed and so tight. That always happens with a closed system. A closed system will turn in on itself and keep gathering and keep gathering and keep gathering, and no more light can even get in there. So that's why a savior figure, type figure, is the only thing that can get in there, because you have to have you take something that is equal to the light and the darkness in a single person, because it's a single realm, and you have to, you land there as a single being. But in our construct, in order to balance, in order to hold the energy of the earth, the physicality, that's what Josh Cram was doing. And then Carmen was on the other side, because there had to be an oppositional force to allow the light side to do its job, to get get everybody churning, get it to move like a blender. And it was designed to provide the experience, rapid escalation of experience, to work the same way that that reincarnation would work if it was a natural process. But we didn't have enough time to have them, die and be born and die and be born and die and be born, because we needed it to go a lot faster. Otherwise, the entire thing was going to be lost. So we built this construct that was, if you think about it a little bit like a round table, we were trying to pack as many different experiences as possible, people to hold that, beings to hold that, to be ambassadors of their vibration and their population. So, for example, if the experience of a soul's growth requires that they have a wide variety of experiences, you're a parent, you're a child, you're a villain, you're a mother, you're whatever. You're the oppressor, you're the whatever, you're the victim, quote unquote. We were trying to because by going through that process over a course of many, many lifetimes, you develop the capacity to see into another person's, to understand another person's point of view. But what had happened on Earth up to that point was that there was just stasis and nobody was learning shit. Basically, you have, 17 years worth of kindergarten, and like, we're still going to go back and do it again. And it's time's up, kids. You gotta move. So, so each of us went in. We had a designated population that we were each going to assist, but we had to preserve the whole free choice point. So what we were trying to do was go down, create a being or a number of different beings that would kind of galvanize the attention so that, and there are variants of this still going on. This is why I'm bringing it up now, because there are variations of this. It spins out and it begins to recreate smaller versions of the same freaking pattern. So in order to address it, you need to know about it. So each soul, as they come in, they add their energy to the construct. And by virtue of where they basically kind of go into a slot where they naturally fit, right? Like equals like, or like attracts like. So if I went down as the divine child, that's my portion of the population, is the divine child who, indigo child. Joan of Arc was the first indigo child on the planet. We established that template. That was where it was introduced. But it didn't really reach, I don't know what the word for that is. Kind of, it has reached critical mass. We're past it now. But it didn't really come in as a great big wave until later. Way later. But Joan of Arc, that person, I was the one who seeded it. Nonetheless, I was a multiple being. I was merely the first one in the body. But I wasn't the first one from the construct that landed. That was Josh Cram. He was the oldest one. He came down and anchored it first because he's the anchoring force. So he landed first. The density was hardest on him. And then came Carmen as Isabeau Bavaria, and then me. I came into the Joan of Arc body as the divine child and brought that frequency down into that physical vessel. But, and I was the only one there for the entire time. And hence, I'm also closing it. So the reason this is still my job, but it won't be my job forever. I very much want to put this thing down. They told me that, my guide told me that I was the first to be called and the last to come. That's actually true of Josh, I think. First to be called and the last to come, because he was the first one in and he's the last one. But then that's going to be a chapter that's ended. The construct will be over. It's almost over. Very much want to put it down. And nonetheless, the things that held us, the anchoring points, those have, like the structure that prevented it from moving, that has come down. So now we should be able to get it to move a little bit. And then once it starts to move, we're really going to be able to pick up some speed. At any rate, so when a person, a soul, like one of the sleepers, when you agree to be a part of an army, or you give your power away to like a saint, a savior figure, a king, a politician, and you say, I'm going to follow this person, allow this person to make my just certain amount of decisions for me. If you're even, and sleepers don't even think about that. They don't even think about that. Usually they follow someone based on just charisma, which is stupid. You could have charisma, doesn't mean you're wise. And you learn that the hard way if you're Nazi youth who followed a charismatic leader and it took them right off a cliff. And now they're sharing group karma. It's very, it's similar, but it has its uses. Like every single thing has a way it could be used. It's like one tool, but you can use it to pull people in one direction or another. So we made Joan of Arc very charismatic and had a whole ton of other qualities in there. And the other beings imparted their qualities. This is where I was talking about group dynamics. You bring yourself to the table. And when you enter into a group dynamic, as this was, you each carry, you don't hold a portion of yourself back. You can't. In the higher dimension, you have the capacity to do that when you're in 3, but you don't do that when you're in higher dimensions. Everything is, in higher dimensions, everything is transparent. And everyone balances for everyone else. So that's an important point. The idea of learning to transmute for someone else is a important skill to have. So one of the things that happens in groups, and this is it's going to affect all of you. That's why I'm saying it. And then I'm going to go back to the Joan of Arc template and tell you why why certain things developed that we must deal with now. And it is going to take this specific group of people to counterbalance, bring back into balance and reclaim, let's say that, reclaim and heal certain horrors that were created from that lifetime. There's a great deal to be said about pedophilia and imprisonment of children. I'm going to keep bringing this, and as I speak, we're going to unlock anything that I've said. Actually, I'm going to do this right now. Anything that I've said that triggered anything in you, any of the people listening, if you're carrying any solidities, any dark portions, any hidden memories, anything from any of your ancestry, any of your lineage, clear. Anything that you contributed to this, you're going to wind up getting back. Anything that we can assist each other in healing, clear that now. Replace it with light. There are certain beings who are just getting free, who have been imprisoned since then. There is disclosure that's going to come out, and I know that it is trickling out now, but it really hasn't slammed the populace in the face. There are many people who preferred not to know certain things about pedophilia, about child sacrifice in the church, children in cages, children being tortured for adrenochrome. Go watch Tangled. We have been saying this all along. There's a new kind of, I'm going to get back to that in a minute. I'm going to talk later on about animation and how we have been preparing the Light Army, preparing them with the skills that they've needed. We sent it through Walt Disney. Is there dark there? Yes, there's dark everywhere. But were we preparing our army the entire time? Yes. There is always a counterbalancing force, and it is us, and we wield it. The new language is telepathic. I guess I'm talking about it now. The new language that we're going to be utilizing is telepathic. It moves constantly. It is self-created. It is visionary. It is pictorial. It's all about a language of moving images. It is a feminine way of speaking. It has multiple timelines, multiple frames a second. Children are born with this way of communication. It allows for connection. It builds unity and connection. It takes a single cell and it finds a connective way through. There's a whole bunch of stuff about hang on. About what the way animation prepares our audience or speaks to our audience in a way that they can understand. Via story, via movement, energy takes the path of least resistance. It is designed to uplift my populace. It deals in harmonics. There's a reason every Disney princess has an animal sidekick or many. There's a reason so many beings sing. There's a reason we have been training our army all along for the comeback, for the freedom, to reach the tipping point, which is now. It's the reemergence of the light army. And it affords you the capacity for self-expression. There are some things in Disney, there's live action, but a lot of it was a world that you create. That's a skill set. The appropriate use of imagination. This is where creation happens in the fifth dimension. It's a skill set. We're going to get back to it. I want to talk about why the Joan of Arc template, because before we can go there and be completely clean, we need to get rid of all the darkness, all the stasis, all the compression, the forces that held us. By us, I mean tortured children. Adults too, who have been imprisoned, suppressed, rendered voiceless, ignored, who are malnourished. This also goes for entire populations. The way this occurred was that during the Joan of Arc lifetime, when the template went down, each person, each sleeper, I don't mean each being on the template, in the construct, I mean as each person added their energy, they would go, it's almost like they would gravitate toward a certain slot or a person's jurisdiction, a being's jurisdiction. So for example, if again, this is the wrong geometry, but for example, if Josh and I are on one point and Josh and Carmen are on the other, and there are other people on other beings in different areas, as this thing turns in space, and all of the beings, when they first come in, they're basically all in the soup. And then by virtue of vibrational drift, everyone is kind of sorted into it's kind of like an elementary school classroom. Like each teacher has a different grade or a different, you go in the one where you kind of fit. I need a tissue, hang on. Your closest vibrational match. And you are going to be led by whoever has that, let's call it a classroom. And that's in your jurisdiction. If you're one of these people, you now have a jurisdiction, a certain populace that belongs to you because they're a close vibrational match to you. I tried with Disney and all sorts of other ways to get my population, to rear them, to raise them. And we become one big blob. I was going to say blob. It's like one big community. And we all share energy within this particular slice of the pizza. We all share energy. My particular agenda in leading my population, my goal is to take, it is opposite of the one that has been held by the Cabal or the Archons. I'm trying to get my planet, or my population, to recover the planet. And I'm trying to give them, my goal is to give them all back their power. I really want them to have free choice, and I want them to be uplifted and happy and free to choose. So the fight has really been for collective consciousness. Remember I said every force produces a form. Every force evolves a form or a circumstance. Everything that happens in the third dimension is the product of the energetic streams that come in and combine in certain recipes, in certain energy streams that look a lot like fiber optics, like bundles of fiber optics. And each one of these strands of light has certain information in it. It's like spiritual DNA. And each being, each person, individual, when you come into a body, you choose your qualities. You basically, your first creation is yourself, and everything emerges from you. So if you want to make adjustments as you go up, you have to, there's only a certain amount of space in a physical form, especially when it's carbon. Our physical forms, when they were carbon, were very dense, and there was really very little. That's why we had to go down as a collective, as a group in this thing, because you can only get a certain amount in the body at a time. So we went down in the higher dimensional, the fifth dimensional template, which is a group template. That's where we're moving up from a three-dimensional individual template to a group template where you share qualities. It's based on task. It's task oriented, and you share qualities, or you can borrow from one another. Put it that way. That's a better way to put it. You can borrow as needed from one another. So it's a totally different. You really have to change your mind about the whole idea of sharing. It doesn't work if you don't share everything that you have. The problem that we wound up with in here is because there are when you go into density, the operating system is one of hoarding. It's very condensed, and everything that you get, you want to keep, and you try to accumulate as much as possible. And competition is huge. You try to win over the other person. So you can't, that's why it's a trap, because as long as you're competing instead of sharing, you can't get out. You're always going to go back. If you're not providing the other person with everything that you brought to the table, you're never going to reach that place of equality. And as a consequence, you're not going to reach a point of balance with a collective. That's why the populations can't get out. We can get out if we can get out as individuals. If you reach a place of equal giving, if you're totally balanced, masculine and feminine, equal giving and exchange, giving and receiving, work and rest, you reach a place of union center. I like to call it union center. And incidentally, there's a Union Center Road in Riften, New York, and that's the place we're going to. It's very interesting. At some point, I'm going to give all the information about the map and what I know about Riften and passing Union Center and going to Eddyville, where the energy goes like this, and that's why Sarah Walker was trapped there. And then we had to get her to Kingston, and the only person who's still stuck in this fucking thing is me. I can't get out yet. There still needs to be another avenue of equality reached. It's not something that a single person can do. It requires another force. That's why we just have to do it. There's the twin flame grid. We knew that was coming in at this time, which is why we put 2 people on every point of our construct, because you must reach this balance. And until each of these different populations reach a place of equal balance relatively, it's not like everyone's going to get it perfect, but you all transmute for one another, but you have to be sharing everything. It doesn't work if one person's hoarding. It's going to cause everything to be lopsided. We knew about the 3 waves of volunteers too, because in the construct, if in the main triad, there was Josh and Carmen and me. And we knew that there was going to be a rotation, and each one of us has a certain wave of volunteers that we bring. And it was 1 man and 2 women, because it's the feminine force that had to rise, because it was the feminine force that had been suppressed. So as a consequence, in order to bring it back into balance, we had to bring it back into balance. There's like a counterbalance that you have to, in order to get it equal, because it was already very heavily male dominated. So what we're trying to do is take the larger picture, and the larger picture is my job. The minutia was held by Carmen. All of these locations come with specific qualities that can be used one way or another. Every given quality doesn't make something necessarily wrong. You just have to utilize it properly. Everything has a purpose. Where was I going with this? Oh, I wanted to talk about the idea of accelerated development. So one of the things that happened in the energetic construct of the Joan of Arc lifetime was that we knew that we weren't out of the woods yet. We knew that it was going to take another this lifetime to finish making adjustments. And we also knew there was going to be a certain degree of cleanup. And boy, howdy, it didn't go as well as we planned. It got way more. We knew it was going to get polarized, because we had to accelerate the development. We didn't know that the polarization was going to lock into such a degree that it was going to be harder to come back from. What happened is that it went into it was already polarized, but in this lifetime, it went the wrong direction. It went backwards instead of forward. So these polarizations kind of got hyper entrenched. Like, for example, in 2013, I shot out of my body, and it took me 6 years to find it again. I'm still not in it, but I couldn't even get back. I couldn't find it. And that's because it was a little bit like in 2013, it was like the energy came out of the ground. And when it came out of the ground, I was the first one that tapped it. It's kind of like difficult to, I don't know how to say this. It's like it's like during the Joan of Arc lifetime, the energy of the trauma sank into the earth. It went out through the ley lines, one big, I want to say it's like a gigantic abscess in the earth. It's been cleared up substantially. It was rift in New York. And all the energy of conflict, the reason it's called Rift On, is because it's the energy of the 100 Years' War it was sent out the same way your body has meridians, and you can address a certain imbalance or a certain ailment in a given organ by I don't know, like an acupuncture spot. Riften is one of those, but it's like the energy of the energy of the 100 Years' War and the Joan of Arc lifetime. Let me say this differently. There's a strong connection, link, a tube almost, a meridian, ley line from the Loire Valley in southern France, and basically that entire region of Europe. It's linked to the Hudson Valley, where I live now. We all do. The whole gang is back. Everybody reincarnates, and they may not remember it, but it's still absolutely true. And every force evolves a form, and it doesn't go away until it's addressed. So all of these specific things that happened in the 100 Years' War, in the Joan of Arc lifetime, in the Loire Valley, have correlations, real specific correlations, identical spots that were intended and put in place, manipulated over a long period of time, to be meant to serve as corrections in this lifetime, one of them being Anna Divine School. Anna Divine School is directly connected to the movie Frozen. Anna Divine, Anna Elsa. It's an elementary school. It's located on one of the most hot, you wouldn't know it, but it's true, one of the most hotly contested locations. And for this reason, it's because it contained the energy of imprisoned children. Whoever controls that location directs the flow of the energy toward either freedom or more confinement for these imprisoned children. There's a pocket of traumatized child energy that is just ferociously fought over. We ferociously try to free it. We want to free them and have them all free. And whoever controls, whoever owns that particular location, right now it is claimed by the dark. So what we had to do is, and I fought for it for 5 years, but I couldn't get the money. The money is someone else's jurisdiction, and they didn't show up for the job. There's nothing I can do. Well, I shouldn't say that there's nothing I can do. I've been working there for 5 years. Actually, make it 6, because I still go back there. But I've gone in to the Anna Divine location. We buried crystal. We've just, teams and teams of us have worked on there relentlessly. I mean, we've got fairies planted there. There's a fairy nesting ground on that spot. But there's also, because all both sides work together. There's a there's a portal on that property. There's a multi-dimensional portal, and the dark wants it because it's constantly being fed with the energy of tortured children who have been sacrificed by the church. This is true. This is absolutely true. If it's news to you, I'm not making it up. It's true. I don't want to, I'm not the one who is supposed to deliver the information, this particular information. My information must stay light. If, somebody else is supposed to do that part for a reason. I can't have that energy interfering with my population who has a specific task. I've got to get my population, through the terrain and established in 5 in order to get everybody else out. So we have people positioned who are going to do the disclosure and who are working on freeing the energy. And it's already largely, I shouldn't say it's largely been done. There's a lot more to do. We're mid-process, put it that way. The energy, wait, let me go back. I want you to understand, we're stepping into a new level of creation. Hello, baby. We're stepping into a new level of creation where we need to understand that, oh, hi. We need to understand that energies in 5 have a direct effect on what happens in 3 and 4. So you cannot afford to be sloppy. Your vibrational hygiene is going to merge, it's going to mix with the energy of the others in your group. And especially when there's combined intent, it's going to coalesce and it's going to come down into a form. It basically gets, it solidifies, and it starts to, depending on where you are, in what strata you're on, what dimension you're in, you can send certain things down to be birthed by certain artists. Depending on where you are in the higher dimensions, you can have an idea and say, I want this movie to be made. And you don't have to have, for example, if I want information to come out in a movie to influence the mass populace, I think it's a misunderstanding that, like, executives or something, screenwriters, they have meetings and they decide where they're going to put 9/11 in the Matrix, and this stuff doesn't really happen that way. You don't have to. It's incredibly cumbersome to work in a linear way that way. It's much easier to change it when it's out of a solid form. When things are easily manipulated because it's still energetic, you can simply decide what you want. You see whoever's open to it, and you put an energy stream down into their mind, and that's where inspiration comes from. An artist's inspiration, they think they thought of it, is usually what happens. But usually, but what it really is that they opened their mind, they connected to something higher, that was a vibrational alignment to them, and they suddenly had an idea and they created it. So we don't have to, if you're a higher dimensional being, you don't have to have a body on Earth. You can send it and have somebody else do it. And they will gain the experience. That's one of the ways, we can send energy down, or send portions of ourselves down through many different bodies at one time. But I want to talk about the way certain forces combine that will always yield a given thing. And then you can apply it in one direction or another. But within the Joan of Arc lifetime, within the original triad, I'm referring to us by our names now, just because I am. So Josh Cram, Carmen Lizardo, and me. In the original triad, I carried the child energy. Carmen carried the mother energy. France will be ruined by a woman and saved by a virgin. We were trying to get the pure energy up and get the population to agree with that and go in that direction because it was going to provide freedom. But someone else has to hold the other part. So, and Josh, of course, provides the father energy, and he's in the middle, the anchor. But he had to be able to reach both of us, so he can actually do both things. In order to accelerate the development of the children, wait, let me rephrase that. In order to accelerate the development of the populace, which was the entire point of going down, accelerate the growth of all of these basically children, our ET children that we had planted there. In order to accelerate the growth of the children, we came down in the Joan of Arc construct. Josh and Carmen's energy combined, since they're carrying that leftover from the past lifetime. I doubt that they knew it before I said it. I was the first one to get to remember it because I shot out of my body because I had to remember it. I had to go all the way up to 12 dimensions, which put me into separation in two directions. Anytime these energies combine, I have to be careful the way I say this. I'm trying to be very precise. Hang on a minute. Okay, wait a minute. Anytime these energies combine, clear. Anything this triggers for you, clear it. Hang on a second. Before I speak the rest of this, I'm calling in all of our higher selves. I'm asking for full integration. Anything that needs to be cleared from anything that's triggered in any lifetime, all dimensions, any ancestry, anything that this is triggering in any person, clear. If any of you have transmuting properties, if any of you have healing properties right now, I'm asking to connect with anybody else that you can feel, any empaths who are picking up on anybody else's trauma right now. If you're picking up on anybody else's issues, trauma, whatever, if you're able to transmute, please hold space and transmute it on their behalf. Whatever needs to happen, just let it come out. We don't want to hold on to any of this crap anymore. They're using me to clear right now. We are calling for forgiveness. I'm calling in this moment, I'm calling for radical forgiveness. For any and all parties on any side of this issue who have ever been imprisoned, experienced satanic abuse from the church, abuse in Hollywood. There's a reason this developed. And I'm calling now for forgiveness of all parties. If you have that in your heart, to forgive the quote unquote abuser I'm asking you to forgive them now. We can't go through as a group until we all forgive one another. We've got to get back to full love and unity. Somebody had to hold the position of both the abused and the abuser in order for the divine child to even emerge. In order for that to be created, the duality had to be held and divided. It had to be held back. In a way, it is a protective mechanism. It's actually a venue out. We had to create a venue out. We had to create something that was that light from a place of incredible density. There had to be something divided so that the light could get in. And so that we could pull some of that out so that the rest had room to move. There was actually a protective mechanism in place, and it looked like darkness. The beings who volunteered for that job took a tremendous burden for the team. I really need that to be known and acknowledged. That doesn't mean it's acceptable. We're leaving it. We're fixing it. We're going to get everyone out unless they choose to stay. But there are a lot, what I want to talk about is that there's certain information that needs to come out, and I would beg of you that you hear it with ears of compassion and don't go further into judgment. Judgment will keep us all held. It will keep us bound. And this was all only ever about freedom. Because the Joan of Arc template, let me rephrase that. Because the construct was developed specifically to accelerate the specifically to accelerate the development on Earth. The energy that we brought in for that purpose was one of accelerated, rapid maturity in children. We had to get that energy in, but it did two things. It produced on the positive side, it produced a population that started growing. It did. It produced a population that started growing on the light side. But for those who were drifting already toward, who were already carrying fear, who were already timid, who were already sensitive and frightened, if I'm a light being and I go down, and I am, but if I'm also all things really, I don't have the right, or I can't, let me say it this way, I cannot, without permission, simply go and grab somebody and yank them out, unless I don't have permission to do that. There's only a certain way you can get in. There's only a certain way you can get in. You need permission. And for beings who are terrified, I've been in this position myself. They caught me too. I was in a tower where I couldn't get out and I couldn't hear my guides. And I was in such physical pain and in such anguish that I couldn't get out. So it becomes its own trap. So when I'm not explaining this very well. Hang on. The energy of the construct that we went in on will always produce accelerated development, prodigy is what happens when it's something positive. But for those who are physically based or in self-centered or service to self, those two energies will turn into energy of early maturation of children. Listen to that part, because this is one of the things that contributed to the massive development of imprisoned child sex slaves. It created this whole thing. Did it free a large number of people? Yes. Did it also create a monster? Yes, it absolutely did. So undoing this now, even though the construct, even though we're not bound by the artificial aspect of it, we are still dealing with the traumatic the connection bound by trauma, because the connection formed by trauma. This is why healing is so absolutely essential. And we as a collective must heal and transmute for one another without the judgment. Because if you're constantly looking at another being and calling them other, calling them the enemy, you will always be trapped. You will never, ever get free. You must learn to love your enemy as yourself. They are you. They are the other side of you, the other aspect of you. And until you get that lesson, I mean, really, until you actually embody that, you're stuck. This is one of the reasons why we're going to have to be very careful with what we create going forward. Because once we're clear, let's say for the sake of example, that we manage to actually get our shit together as a collective and balance ourselves properly and go up to 5. Let's say the first wave goes up to 5. We're going to be the first group, large group up there in the new architecture. And we're going to be creating something that has never been created before. We're going to have to be very aware of where we're going to have to be very aware of what our own tendencies are, what we did in the past, where we went wrong in the past, not for self-condemnation, but to make sure that we don't fuck it up again. It went wrong. Let me rephrase that. In order to get it out, we created something that went into hyperpolarization. We're never going to let it go that off balance again. It's been a bitch to come back from. Let's assume that we're reunified as a group. I have been told that my role going forward, once this job is done, I'm still in the old job. I don't get to go in the new job until, and the new job is going to be really, really fun. It's going to be really great. I can't wait to get there. The new job is going to be all about creating the new thing and introducing all of these new dimensions. Everybody's coming back. All of the realms are coming back. The plants are coming back. The talking to plants, the telepathy with all other beings is coming back. The joy is coming back. The rainbows are coming back. There's no longer any division. You know, in the carbon body, we had chakras where even the colors were divided, but we're going into a unified auric field of rainbow light. And all of our thoughts manifest very quickly, and everybody's happy. So it's high vibrational, and you get very, very rapid manifestation. So you're very aware if you start to create something that's a little bit funky and it's not really going the way you wanted, you do a rapid correction because you're aware that your thoughts made that thing. The third dimension has a protective feature, which is the timeline and the belief in separation. You can only do so much damage when you're one being in isolation. It's I don't want to say you can only affect yourself, but there's a protective barrier where basically it's like anything else. It has a positive use and it has negative features too. It really depends on how you use it. But your creative ability is limited when you are asleep, and when you believe that you're when you're reduced to a singular form, and you go into, you know, if you're listening to this, you already know this part, I think. But to go back to the part that I keep crying about, when this is the part I want you to hear with ears of compassion, please. Anytime those energies combine, you're going to get accelerated early maturation of children. So Joan of Arc was like this child star that wound up influencing the pedophilia, influencing nothing. It wound up creating it. It wound up in its bastardized form, creating the pedophilia in Hollywood, creating, you know, MK Ultra, mind control. It wound up creating the pedophilia and the child sacrifice in the church. This is all the shit we're undoing. At this time in history, every last icon must come down, one way or another. The same forces dark versus light, and they interact in a certain way. And within certain places, any time you have an icon or a kind of a structure, I want to what's the word, like an institute, a social institute, like we'll say the church. I'm going back to like the John of God scandal. He's this great healer with this powerful array of entities that do this healing work through him. I've been through that protocol 6 times. I was dying. I was given 4 months to live. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. I mean, they did, but I didn't know how to fix it. I was dying. My organs were shutting down. I had psychic surgery with John of God, with a surrogate. My energy went into that circuit, and that became food. I was not aware of that at the time. But I do understand that a given light being, or I should stop calling it that, a given being, you can be very much in service to humanity and still have horrendous things that came from your work that were just a byproduct of the thing that formed on the opposite side of the work that you were trying to do. For example, I do have a lot of compassion for all of the victims of John of God, but also for John of God. because boy, I can really empathize with his position. I understand how that happens. I can see the energy of the forces, that it's almost like it couldn't do anything else. If you go down in service of that kind and you do all of this service, you're going to wind up gathering basically the dark side has to go somewhere. You can't go and just obliterate, pretend that the dark side won't get nourished. It's going to go somewhere. So if this isn't really what I had intended to talk about, but it's kind of like, no, I'm going to talk about that different day. I was going to use the analogy of a balloon, like a long magician's balloon, the kind you make like balloon animals out of. It's very much like that. You can't pull on just one side of a rubber band. If you want the light side to get much stronger, something's going to happen on the other side that is, it's equal and opposite. If you have a long balloon, let's take the idea of let's use this example. One of the points of the construct held Sarah Walker and me, and I had to be extremely detached in order to do my job. In order to do my job, I have to be emotionally detached. When I left my body, there was a period of time in like 2013 where I shot out of my body and I went up 12 dimensions in order that, so that was a bad part because I couldn't get back. There was a number of severings, detachments, where there was a break in the circuit that I couldn't get back down. I couldn't find my way back down. But the way we designed that to happen is that the person who goes up is automatically going to go into a realm where there is less emotional attachment. You have to have that in order to do your job. The reason that like people with Asperger's or people who have autism or something, the reason there's a certain level of there's a heightened sensitivity, but then there's a certain kind of aloof, detached, there's a detachment that comes that has to be there. It's not that you're less sensitive, it's that you won't survive if you have that kind of creative ability, but you're also extremely emotional. You're going to wind up making creations very rapidly that aren't something that you would want. For example, if you have an explosive emotional reaction, or if you feel everybody's stuff, and I'm not explaining this very well. Cancel. If you have instant manifestation and you are also very emotionally driven, you're going to wind up making a creation very quickly. You know, if you see a car crash or something and you have a big emotional explosion in a place where you have instant manifestation, you've just you're going to create something real bad real fast if you're focusing on the wrong thing. So the person who is opposite, if you're in this particular structure, which is coming down, it's not completely going to work this way. Going forward, the group dynamics are a little bit different. But if you are in this structure and you're on opposite sides of the stick, one person is going to be very emotional if the other person is very detached. It's like the twin dynamic. There's a certain amount of any given quality, and your job is to find, as a twin or as anybody else in a twin dynamic, your job is to find center. That's why there's a road called Union Center that's right up the road from Anna Divine School. You need to, as both parties find center, that's where you achieve balance, and you are the 11. You go up to the next level, or you can if you want. We were working on in this structure. The reason there were 2 on every single point is because we were setting the table, or we were establishing the precedent for the twin grid, the twin flame grid, that is going to help lift us up to lift us all up to 5 as a collective. You got the three waves of volunteers, and we're going to wind up lifting up the entire planet, which has never before been done. It's unique, the same way Joan of Arc was unique. And we're never going to go back into a system where there is one answer to everything. This is designed to be something that is as far out of the box as possible. Emphasis being out of the goddamn box. Emphasis being on free choice. Each person is going to be allowed to, freely permitted to create themselves. And when this information, I think I'm going to wrap this up fairly soon, but when my information about Disney finally comes out in a codified form, in kind of bite-sized pieces, I'm going to wind up talking about Olaf. If you want to do some searching, watch the Disney movies through the eyes of symbolism. You will see that, notice Olaf specifically. There's a lot to notice in Frozen. Frozen, by the way, was the thing that was designed to influence mass consciousness, designed to bring it back to center point from the Joan of Arc fire. You have to do the equal and opposite thing, and it has to be done in a large enough way that it will take the population's attention and into it's going to counterbalance it. So you have the Joan of Arc fire that I've seen illustrated on things like earrings. I actually went into a store one time. I saw a pair of Joan of Arc burning in a fire earrings. Don't do that. That's one of those things that seems funny, but it's not. It created something. The energy of fire is extremely powerful. It's extremely potent. It had a tremendous impact that was negative when you burn a child in a fire. The impact of that was so profoundly dark that it created some good things. It also created equally in a dark way. So in order to kind of reel that back, we put Frozen into Disney, that was designed to take the energy, the counterbalancing energy. Something extra cold needs to be, you carry that frequency and you put that into mass consciousness. And as a group, you can kind of start tapping it back into 0 point. You reach 0 point. And then after it's actually rebalanced, you can then go off and create something new. It was telling the same story in Moana, by the way. Te Fiti, the Taka, the fire being, extremely angry at having been robbed of that which she created. That's Joan of Arc all over. And then you've got the divine child that goes across the ocean, very much the way we navigate the new realm of 5, where everything is moving all the time. There is a way to go on it, to travel on it. That's the voyage of Moana completely. And when you settle the score, when you reincorporate me, I should stop saying you, I should say me. I was actually told I had to do that. I had amputated. I never wanted to look at that lifetime ever again. I had such an extreme amount of trauma. And I was told that the only thing I could do was speak about it. And when it was reintegrated, not from a place of ownership, who the fuck would want it anyway? But I was told that I had to integrate it and also finish that lifetime. For those of you who don't know, was truncated. The mission came this close to being done, and it was not able to be finished because someone didn't bother getting me out of prison because they decided to keep the money, which is exactly the same situation we're in now, where I've been in this apartment, this 1-bedroom apartment, for 6 years. And I'm in such poverty right now that I have no way of actually getting out. There are certain forces that have been suppressing me and keeping me here. So there's a certain amount of information. Patterns repeat until you change them. The person in this lifetime whose job it was to help me elected not to because they thought money was more important. Same thing happened the last time. They had the money for ransom, but they decided not to pay it. She's a pain in the ass. Just leave her there. We'll just ignore it. Pretend it goes away. It doesn't. You are responsible for cleaning up any mess, and it's only going to get bigger if you don't clean it up this lifetime. It's just going to wind up, it blossoms. Okay, so where was I going with this? At some point so I did start to talk about a little bit about Olaf. I'm going to talk about that. I'm almost done with this call, but you know, for those of you who have seen the movie Frozen, you know, at the end where Elsa kind of resurrects Olaf, who's made of 3 she resurrects him and she gives him his own little mini environment to take with him. That's where we're headed. We're headed in the 5th dimension, where each person is going to be simultaneously part of a group and also responsible for maintaining their own field so that they don't really infect other people. It's a balance between full connectivity, to maintain both full connectivity and absolute autonomy as well. You've got sovereignty and connectivity. The trick is to make sure that when you pick up something, when you feel something negative for someone, you transmute it and clear it. It's kind of like you're all filters. And as this stuff is, as this collective energy is moving through all parties. Oh, I did want to talk about empathy. Hang on. Being an empath. I lost my previous train of thought. Let me go back. The rules that govern the 3rd dimension are different. It's almost like it's flipped. It's reversed. A lot of it is reversed when you go into 5. The operational system is different. In the 3rd dimension, if you are an empath, one of the things they always say to empaths is don't take on anybody else's stuff. Like if you're a healer and you go to work on somebody, the rule in the third dimension or in the past dimension has always been don't take on their stuff. You don't have to take on their stuff in order to heal it. That's true, you don't have to. But in the fifth dimension, crud, I've lost my snake. Oh, damn. I hope he's not under the stove. I hate it when he does that. Where are you, buddy? Oh, nope. I've got a loose lizard and a loose snake. Oh, no. I'll find him. So we're always told not to take on, that there's no need to take on other people's stuff into our body. And that's true in the third dimension. That's going to just make you ill if you do that. However, in higher dimensions, it's very, very common, also extremely easy. I have a much easier time taking, because we're porous, right? We move other people's frequencies. It's like going back to sharing bathwater, sharing like the jacuzzi. Basically, everybody filters for everybody else. So if you are in a group energy, it's like a shared hot tub, and somebody, you do wind up feeling what other people feel. And so it's important to not go into a place of putting up walls. You need to be able to maintain your own sovereignty and only take on that, basically that what you want, but also transmute. So the other day I was in a group and we really haven't ironed all of this out yet. I'm going to wind up talking about the All Creation Network. I don't think I'm going to do that this day. We have to figure out a different format and put some I'm going to work on that. I'm going to put some energetic structures in place so that nobody gets something that they don't want, that they can't take. It's kind of like, if everybody shows up as a particular kind of, like an individual pumice stone, there are only like the holes in the sequences of every person will be able to be filled by somebody else who has it. Whatever is needed, you can get it just by virtue of being in somebody's proximity or being in that linked with the rest of your group. Somebody who has the quality that you want, as the energy is flowing, you can just, if you have a deficit of, I don't know, zinc or broccoli, or if you need some quality of if you wish you were wittier, if there's somebody in the group who's very witty, you can simply you can borrow what you would. Oh, I wanted to talk about this. If every person shows up in a group and they are their own recipe of qualities, when their energy flows through you, you do not have to take on everything that they carry. So for example, if somebody showed up, if I was in a group the other day and somebody showed up and they were very upset about something, and I don't want to take on the upset part, but I do admire, let's say I admire certain characteristics of theirs. I can, when their whole energy is flowing past me, I can absorb some of their wittiness or their compassion or their color, their strength, any number of good things that I want. It's I have a degree, a couple of degrees in art, and one of the things I learned is how to steal like an artist. You see something that somebody else did, and maybe you wouldn't do it exactly that way, but they've done something. You see something, you're like, boy, they have that. I want to borrow just that thing that they do. You don't have to take all of it. You can just take the part that you want. Your first creation is yourself. When we go up into 5, you create yourself first. So there, you're going up and you're becoming, because we've changed our physical structure, we're no longer locked into density and stuck with what we are. We can morph and change, and some of our qualities are going to stay, but we're also a lot more porous. So we've got more space to start to like futz around with things that we like. We can say, you know, that person is has a lot of knowledge, and I'm going to take some of that. And that person's a great musician, and I wish I had that. And you can just take it. You can take their frequencies if you want. So what it trains you to do, and it's really all, it's like school. It teaches you to, one, look for commonalities, look for the best thing in people. This is training you to go up in dimension still with larger groups once you've gained the skill set of looking for the best, looking for the thing in somebody that you admire. Don't look for the flaw. You don't want that part. You can identify it. You can say, boy, that person's judgmental and bossy and really pushy, and I don't want any of that stuff. Keep that thing at bay. But when their energy comes past me, I'm going to use the part of that provides them with a lot of momentum, the part of them that allows them to take command and be a leader. I'm going to take that, I'm going to see that as a good thing, see that quality, and I'm going to use that end of the stick and borrow from that. I'm going to use that stubborn quality that they have, that I identify the stubborn part, like I see it, but I'm going to use it and take that when it passes me, and I'm going to turn it towards stability instead of being intransigent. We all wind up transmuting for one another, provided we've decided to tip it toward the positive. When shit comes around, you turn it toward its best advantage. That's the way we collectively lift the group up. If you see somebody in the group and you identify every last flaw and you get really angry and you call them an enemy and you call them unwanted, ta-dum. By the time it gets to you, you're going to experience exactly what you made over there. Karma comes real. It's not really karma anymore in the fifth dimension. In fact, if that's what you're doing, you won't even make it up into 5. You will fall back down because you'll feel crappy, and you're going to wind up miscreating things, and you'll wind up falling back out. You'll fall down into a lower dimension. There's no external source that is saying you can't come because you're bad. That doesn't happen. What happens is that you fall out because you forgot how the way it worked. A lot of beings started out very positive and got trapped by density because they started believing it. It's very easy to get trapped down here, like one big fat glue trap. All right. Is there anything else that I didn't talk about what I wanted to talk about, but I talked about a little bit of it. However, this call is long. Group 10 plate, don't shit in the hot tub. That's important. Who is this coming from? A lot of times we experience stuff that is not necessarily ours. In the fifth dimension, when you feel somebody else's stuff, you can transmute on their behalf and dramatically alleviate their burden. That's actually a very efficient way of healing others. That you don't do it in when you're in 3, but you very often do it with very easily, faster, in 5. When you're in 5, you can take on someone's sorrow. I do this all the time. I can take the collective sorrow from or rage or whatever from a group, and I feel it very strongly for a second. I allow it to run through me, and then I bring it back and very swiftly redirect it toward the positive. This is the way group transmuting works. If you are in and also this is a skill set that is going to have to be in place. We need to link with one another before the shit really hits the fan with disclosure in the lower dimensions. When the very, very, very dark stuff starts to come up, and it starts to be felt by those in our vicinity, those of us who are empaths, are we going to pick that up? Yeah. So it's important so that we don't get dragged down. We don't keep ourselves in separation, because it's going to, if you take that on when you're in separation, it's very easy to just simply get dragged back down yourself. We can't have that. What we have to do is link with one another as light, really clean. If you've done most of your purging work, if you're able to hold a high vibrational space and connect with others from a space of love, we establish this network first so that we are prepared to handle that kind of traffic and group transmutation. We basically get a whole bunch of really filthy shared bathwater. And that kind of negativity would really take one of us down if we were not connected to other transmuters. We will all transmute for one another, and it's going to wind up really affecting the financial network, the group telepathy. We're being prepared to handle greater and greater quantities. As you go up in vibration, you also go up in service automatically. Your service level, the requirement, what it requires of you is that you serve others. And if you're capable of serving a small group of others, your next level of service is to serve a larger group. You do not have the luxury of ascending, going up in vibration and taking care of just you. You also need to take care of yourself, but you recognize that there is no just you. There's a point that you don't even, so many of us who started out way up here coming down to help have an extremely difficult time compressing into form. In fact, we can't get down to 3 at all. I haven't been fully into 3. Really haven't been fully into 3. Not fully. Getting down to 5 is difficult for me. After 2013, I haven't even been, even getting down to 5 is hard. But when the rest of the planet comes up, there's going to be one great big homecoming. Everybody's going to be there. All right. Should I take some questions? How long have we been on now? Oh, 2 hours. What the fuck? My daughter's gone for the evening. I may as well take some questions. Anybody, any questions? What do we got? Gretel. Hi, Gretel. Haven't seen you in a long time. Let's see. Who do we have? Camille. Lane Stowe. Hey. Who else? Oh, Belinda Spence. Hi, sweet pea. Who else we got? Who knows if they're still here? I'm so glad to see all of you. I love you. Candy, I'm glad she got here. Samantha. Hi, y'all. I'm so glad you came. Barb Brewer. Hi. Oh my God. Oh my God. I remember Romper Room where she would get and she would look into the camera and she would say, she was this preschool teacher on Romper Room, and she would list all the names of the kids that she saw when she looked at the camera. And I always wanted her to say my name and she never did. I hope it didn't traumatize anybody. I see you all. I love you. The weird thing is, like when I have sessions with people, I forget their name. I connect with them on a vibrational level. But I can't remember names to save my life. And the weird thing is, I'm incredibly clairaudient, so clairaudient. And I don't know how to turn that off, that I can't even talk on the phone. I'm totally deaf in this ear, and I'm about 70% deaf in this ear. Nerve deafness when I was 2. I can hear better out of this ear. But with the clairaudience, so I can hear tons of shit that other people can't hear, and very little that other people can hear. And it makes talking on the phone almost impossible. If in order for me to understand anything on the phone, if it's just auditory, I can't make that connection. I hear everybody, I hear all these other dimensions, but I can't hear the living person trying to reach me on the phone. I can't. For some reason, I can connect with everybody's energy if it's visual. And I can reach out and I can feel the vibrations, like I can feel the different groups of people. and I can dial my own vibration up and down and tune into different bandwidths. And that's kind of a wild skill. There's going to come a point, so I'm not going to do it tonight, but there's going to come a point where I'm going to wind up talking a little bit about harmonics and the way that fifth dimensional navigation works and group dynamics. What the fuck? I will finish the story now because I think Lane Stowe is still on the call. If Elaine, if you're still on the call, I'm telling this story. I was going to tell the story anyway, but I'll tell it tonight since you're here, if you're still here. Those of us who have come in with the operating system from very higher dimensions, which work in a different way. We come in with the operating system that is all share oriented, and it's not linear. It's not governed by structure. The structure is very, very, very different, and everything moves and everything shifts. And there's a built-in understanding that you share with everyone wherever. Every place you see a need, if you know how to do whatever that thing is, everybody's skill set is shared. So you just go and everybody raises everybody else's children, and everything is group oriented. So if you see something hungry in passing, you just feed it. And if you see something that needs doing, you just do it. And you don't ask for permission, and there are no lanes. Oh, Lane Stowe, you're here. You're the reason I was telling you a story. Okay, there's one lane. But there aren't, it's like we don't stay in boxes in the higher dimension. We just go, we have this operating system where we just naturally dive in to serve like a murmuration of starlings. I always say that it's just like a murmuration of starlings, and it is. There's this multiplicity of beings. And everyone is they're like isolated, but they're also, everybody just moves. And there's like group mind, but there's also individual mind, and everything just morphs and shifts. And it's just an operating system that is very, very, very different. Starlings move in a very different way than something like Canada geese, who clearly, they have a hierarchy, they have a structure, they work together. But those of us who were born awake, who remember the way things work, who see interdimensionally, we find it difficult we have to be taught, put it that way. We have to be taught, we have to learn how to stay in three-dimensional, how the world works down here, because it's fucked and it's not normal. Plus, we know on some level that we came to fix it. We know that it's fucked. It's not supposed to work this way. It is too rigid down here. Nonetheless, we have to be trained to not just volunteer to, cut somebody else's meat or whatever. We don't eat meat either, but you know what I mean. Most of the people who are like born enablers are really just tapping into a different operating system, where if you see a need, you fill it. There are those of us who just connect with those who naturally work that way. And we have to learn how it's done down here because it's so foreign. It's just foreign. So anyway, when I was I have a long past life history, many multitudes of lifetimes as in music, because I have specialized in multidimensional harmonics. One of my other lifetimes that was a counterbalance to all lifetimes are concurrent. Do you know this? All lifetimes are actually happening concurrently because there is no actual time. This is off the topic. I'll get back to my story in just a second. When you leave the timeline, when you leave your body, you can see actually all of your lifetimes. It's on Earth. It looks like a horizontal kind of like a an apartment building, but all of these different levels they're all going on at the same time. And you only experience one of them when you go in and land. It's like a long apartment building with a roof taken off, and all of these lifetimes are happening simultaneously in these different locations. And depending on where you come down, once you're in it, you're in that lifetime and you experience it. So there is no actual linear time. And sometimes also you can, for example, depending on what happens in one lifetime, you can say, well, this is getting really out of balance. I have to go do something over here in a different lifetime to counterbalance this other thing. So one of the ways that I did that from the Joan of Arc lifetime, that left me with certain problems, real problems to address with myself. For one thing, having to do with a clairaudient. Holy crap, did I lose my self-confidence and my trust in my own abilities really bad. So much trauma attached to my hearing. I didn't trust myself anymore. I didn't trust my sense of hearing. There was a Joan of Arc lifetime where everything went so hideously wrong as far as I was concerned, because I said I heard voices, and I said everything was going to work out, and then it didn't. And I lost my trust in my own hearing. So I had a counterbalancing lifetime, because I had a tremendous amount of musical background anyway. I went down as in a very healing lifetime, one of my favorite lifetimes actually. I went down and I was a blind child prodigy again, because I was working to resurrect that energy in a good way. I went down as another child prodigy for England. So Joan of Arc was a child prodigy for France. I went down as a child prodigy for England, because I had to be a prodigy for England in a way where the English would celebrate my abilities and wouldn't kill me for it. That was one of the ways that we were counterbalancing, or I was counterbalancing, struggling to come back from the fucked up Joan lifetime. So I went down as a blind child prodigy, probably the best organ player in the world. I was a prodigy. I was a composer. But I at age 6, my mother in the Joan of Arc lifetime was my mentor, Maurice Brown, who was Maurice Green in that lifetime. But then he was Maurice Brown, my painting teacher in this lifetime, who I love. I love him so much. And he goes down, he precedes me, and he's always my mentor in some capacity. He leads me in my professional service. And actually in this lifetime, he told me that I should do some writing, and I always take his advice because it's always phenomenal. Anyway, I went down as John Stanley, and but I was blind, and it forced me, in losing my sight, to redevelop my self-confidence in terms of what I heard. I had to go back and fix that because I was so completely traumatized, and it forced me to use that to navigate successfully my whole life while being a prodigy for England, in a way that the English celebrated me instead of trying to kill me. So that was one of the things that happened. And the Dauphin, who I put on the throne as Joan of Arc, was my wife in that lifetime. Michael Withall was my wife, was John Stanley's wife, and his sister Anne lived with us. Her name was Anne in that life too. Anyway, I digress. Oh, I was talking about, Lane's waiting for me to tell my goddamn story. I know a lot about choral works. I use it when I was John Stanley. I was a composer, and I composed trumpet voluntaries. Some of them are still in existence. Michael actually threw out most of my work in that life as well as this one. So most of John Stanley's compositions that he was lauded and heralded for and did a fine job were thrown out the same way he did that with my artwork in this lifetime. Thank you so much. At any rate, I know how choruses work. John Stanley was very famous for, he was friends with Handel, and Handel used to come, and I would do improvisational, I would improvise on the pipe organ every Sunday. And I used to do concerts when I was John Stanley. I did an annual performance of the Messiah. Well, it was annual, it was every year for a foundlings hospital. So the themes are always the same. Saving children is a big one. Handel's Messiah. It's one of my favorite choral works. The point being that I have this very intuitive understanding of how choruses work, which is why I can usually harmonize with things, and I can keep track of all the different parts and know the way that works. So here's my story that I was trying to get to. It's a long preface. When I was about 11, 12, I was 12, something like that. Lane and I were in a chorus at Ontour Junior High. There was a chorus teacher, Mr. Proper, and it was a 3-part chorus because it's 3-part harmony in junior high. And I could tell, and I didn't know anything about Joan of Arc. I didn't know that I had a history with choruses. But nobody told me that I had to stay in my own lane. I didn't know that, whatever. We would learn this piece of music, and I thought, because I could tell what he was aiming for, the chorus director, he was trying to get balance, a balanced, equal sound from all 3 parts. And there were a lot of sopranos. Most of the girls were sopranos. The second largest group were the mezzo-sopranos, and there were about 6 altos who were whose voices were all breaking. And he wasn't getting a hell of a lot of the alto part really needed to be brought up. And he was trying to get them to be louder, and he was trying to tone down the sopranos, but also the sopranos couldn't hit a lot of the high notes, or they were hesitant to do it because it took more work. So I remember as a mezzo-soprano, and I had a decent voice, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do this. Nobody told me I thought I was supposed to do it. I knew all 3 parts. And so what I would do was, as we sung, I was keeping track automatically of all of these different parts. And when it got to the part where the altos they needed more volume, I would just leave my section and go and sing their part. And then when the sopranos couldn't hit the high note, I would just go and hit the high note there. And I was just darting around with wherever I thought the need was. And I thought I was supposed to do that. And one day after class, as we were all leaving, Mr. Prover called me over. He was smiling. He was very nice. He was a very nice man. He also liked me. I was a good student. I paid attention, and I was really into it. But when everybody left the room, he said, "I see what you're doing, and you're right, but you have to stop." He said, "What you don't realize is that you're kind of a little bit the anchor, like the leader. You're the loudest, and you're the other people in your given section in the mezzo sopranos are following you. So when you go off and you dive in and sing all the other parts, it's really confusing the people around you." Anyway, he was very nice about it, but I had to learn to stay in my own section, because it's not that's a long story, but that's the whole story. That I had to learn to stay in my own section because we don't have boundaries the same way. You feel whatever the tree feels, and if the tree is thirsty and you water it, it just goes that way. You know who's itchy and you scratch them if they can't reach it themselves. There's just a different operating system. You just have to be told. I wasn't disagreeing with him. He just had to tell me how it works here. So basically, I guess I'm leaving this call now. This is long and rambling. Like everything I do is long and rambling, because the universe is very, very, very generous. And a good artist is always generous. There's a lot of information that comes down. And it's difficult. It can feel extremely overwhelming to those who are like in this portion of the triangle where it gets dense. It's overwhelming. It disrupts them. It's too strong. They don't know what to do with it. And so usually it gets too strong and they shut down and they get very, very compressed, because that's just one of that's the opposite part. It works in opposition. So what we both have to do is learn to meet in the center, and then it's going to be more comfortable. And then the density will be lessened. It will be lightened substantially. And the really loose, wacky part will have a bit more structure where we can function, but we can't, none of us from up there can really get down this far into density. Plus we don't want to, we never want to. That's what we came to fix. We actually came to fix the compression. Anyway, I love you all. I love you all so much. If anybody would like to leave a donation, I looked at my bank account today, and I have $4 in it. And I love my work. And this is my life's work. I came to do this. The problem that I'm having is that the people that I've been working with, we have all left. Those of us who are attracted to my work, many of us have already left the third dimensional financial system. We're not attached to it. We're getting, it's actually, we're deliberately, we have been, by virtue of divine intervention, we've been deliberately unplugged, so that it's a protective mechanism too, because shit's gonna hit the fan. There, it already is. If we're above it, we won't be affected by it. So it's actually a safety mechanism. We don't want to keep trying to attach to it. We just need to establish our own structure in 5 so that is solid enough so that we have a stable connectivity network, so that we can get more and more and more people up in it without the corruption. So the corruption has to leave first, and that's what's happening. The children are being freed. We're dealing with all of that darkness. It's all leaving. But if anybody feels like leaving a donation, I would appreciate that, because I still have to eat, and the government systems aren't, my energy is so out of alignment that it's not functioning for a lot of us. So if you are someone who is still in 3, if you are able to leave a donation, please go down on my wall, on my timeline, and leave a donation. Anything would be very helpful. This is my only work at this time. What was the other thing? If anybody would like a private session, please send me a message and we will schedule that. I'm very keen on getting as many adherences. If this brought up any trauma or anything that you feel like you were really stuck with whatever I said, particularly if it's any portion. I was working yesterday with a someone who was a child sex slave of the Illuminati, and there's a lot to be undone there. I don't mean just with this person, but if you have things that you feel like you can't get over, they're repeating patterns, you feel something adhering, and you want to get free of it, but you can't get it off your back or whatever. I have a very strong desire to help lift that, because I really do view that as my own. Let's fix it together. I can give as many free, I will do as much pro bono work as I possibly can for those who truly are not able to afford it. But I also need to live. So I will just leave that with you. And thank you for dropping in on this live stream. I'm not entirely sure what the network is going to be, the way we're going to make that operate. I don't know yet. So stay tuned yet. I'm working with Sarah Adams and we're trying to put together. We're trying to put it together. Okay. That's it. I'm going to go find my snake. I love you. I love you. I think I said that like 15 minutes ago and then I kept talking. All right. Bye.